What's up, guys? Spin Firearms here, and let's just talk about triggers. Triggers in general, I tend not to be a trigger snob, but if a trigger is bad, I'm going to say it's bad, and if I don't like it that much, I'm going to try and do something to it. Now, for instance, here's my Bursa BP 9cc. It has such a light trigger. It's got a 3-pound trigger in it, stock. Now, it has a very, very short reset. Now, it's got a lot of take-up on that first trigger pull, but after that, it's a beast of a trigger. Way too light, and on top of that, notice, no trigger safety, no dingus, nothing to prevent, an accidental pull crazy with such a light trigger. Bursa is a well-known company, respected, used in law enforcement in other countries. A really nice firearm, but would I ever carry this? No, simply because of the trigger. An awesome firearm for the range, but I would never ever carry it because of that trigger. Now, people's number one complaint is about stock Glocks, like this Gen 3 Glock. Honestly, I didn't like the trigger that came with it. Everything is OEM on this firearm, except for obviously backplate, sights, base plate. But I added a connector to it, a Ghost Avenger connector, so it's self-cleaning. The self-cleaning aspect to it really makes sure that there's no malfunctions with that connector. Also, I run Ghost connectors on a lot of my firearms and never had one single issue. And it's actually pretty amazing. You open your firearm up after 500, 1,000 rounds, and that thing is the only clean part in your firearm. And that's your connector, which is a big deal when it comes to shooting. Anyways, all it does is when you add a 3.5-pound connector, it just makes it be less spongy and more crisp and a little bit lighter. But it doesn't turn it into a 3.5-pound trigger. You'd have to mess with safeties, and a bunch of stuff to make it like that. But it ends up being a perfect trigger. I'm perfectly happy with this, with that Ghost connector on it. Now there's stuff like my Glock 26 everyday carry. This is a Wheaton armed trigger, a very reliable company. I really like this trigger. I have over 1,000 rounds through this build, probably somewhere in around 1,200 rounds, 1,300 rounds, something like that. I've put a lot of rounds through it. Not a single issue with this Wheaton arms trigger, and it's beautiful. It's not the lightest trigger, which is what I want. I don't want a 3-pound trigger. It's probably around 4 pounds or so, 4.5, but it's smooth, it's clean, fast reset, very, very easy to shoot with. I love it. So if you don't like your trigger as a whole, that's one way to do it. It's a more expensive way. Whereas what I did to my Glock 19, that'll cost you $13 to $15. So very cheap part that'll change the whole firearm. Now there's stuff like my Glock 43X. This is completely OEM internals. This came with an amazing trigger right out of the box. I don't know why. I bought it as a Glock 48, just made an upper for it. For some reason, it's just an amazing trigger as is. Now, is it the best? No, but it's awesome for a Glock. Very crisp, very light, and not spongy at all. Don't know why that is. Completely OEM, and it just runs, so I don't need to do anything to it. Same with my Glock 26 Gen 5. Even though it's not as good as my 43X, it's still a good trigger for carry. You don't want something too light, because here's the thing. When adrenaline is pumping through you, when you just went through a crazy situation where someone got hurt or you got hurt, or there's just craziness around you, you don't want to not be thinking in the moment, accidentally pull your too light of a trigger. So that's what I really like about Glocks is they don't have a light trigger. They have a little bit of a spongy trigger. So you're going to catch yourself, hopefully, in a situation like that. Because it's hard. In situations where it's chaos, it's hard to keep your finger on or off the trigger and know what to do in that exact situation. You don't know if there's more threats. You don't know if the guy's going to get back up. So it's a hard thing when it's just chaos and adrenaline. Anyone who's been in a situation, they know it's chaos. It's not that easy to think, and training is the only thing that kicks in. But sometimes you need that finger on the trigger just in case there's another threat, and it is what it is. That's even what they teach you in defensive pistol. Is even though that guy's down, before you got to clear the area, make sure you're good. You got to check your surroundings. Finger needs to stay somewhat on that trigger. Let's just be real. And that's, for your sake. Now, there's 2 firearms I really enjoyed this year, and I'm really glad I got them, and they will never go anywhere in my collection. And that's the CSX by Smith & Wesson and also the Shield Plus by Smith & Wesson. This is a different kind of a trigger because it's hammer fire. It's a 1911 styled firearm. It's not the exact platform. As you can see, there's a dingus on it. But it's a very smooth trigger. It's a good trigger. The reset is a little shaky to some people. I have no issue with it because it's such a short trigger pull that you can, unlike your other firearms where you're just shooting to reset, this you can take your finger all the way off just a little bit and keep pulling. I've mag dumped the 12-round mag in this in 2 seconds online. I have the short up there, 2 seconds mag dump the whole thing, no issues with the trigger. This is an awesome, underrated firearm. Great trigger. I love it. Now, my favorite trigger for everyday carry, though, is the Shield Plus. Now, it's not the lightest trigger in the world, but it's crisp. It's clean. It's a very short reset. It's very easy to get follow-up shots. A very, very nice everyday carry trigger. To be honest, my ideal everyday carry trigger would be the Shield Plus. I have other issues with the Shield Plus. Nothing malfunction-wise. It's just how my hand fits the grip. Not a big deal, though. It's a great firearm. If it fits your hand or if you can add some grips to it, it's a great everyday carry trigger. I think it's a happy medium. Not too light, not too heavy. Very crisp, clean reset, and very tactile feel to it. You can feel the reset. You can feel everything that's going on with your trigger, which is huge for triggers. Now, a trigger that I don't like, but I'm not going to modify, is my Taurus G3C. It has a very long first trigger pull, and as we all know, the hardest shot to be accurate with is that first trigger pull for that reason. The last thing I need in my life is for me to be carrying a Taurus G3C, and because that first trigger pull, I mess something up. That is not what I want. I miss a shot. Someone else can get shots back on me, whatever. I need something that's crisp, clean, and not too light, but at the same time, the first trigger pull on this is sort of nasty, guys. But it's an awesome toy for the range, a truck gun. You know, there's a bunch of uses for the Taurus G3C, a budget everyday carry firearm choice, and so on. I love my Tauruses. They're great firearms, just not for everyday carry for me. Then on my Glock 30, the trigger that came on this is sort of nasty. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it yet. Well, it's not as nasty as the G3C. It's just not as good as my 19 with that connector. It's not as good as my 43X out the box or my Gen 5 out the box. It's sort of nasty. Sometimes you get Glocks like this. My Glock 29 trigger is awesome out of the box. My Glock 30 trigger, and I think a lot of that has to do with connectors and stuff like that, angles of the connector. The connector can be just a little bit off, and it's going to cause a little bit more drag and sponginess and so on, but probably just add a ghost connector to it. Tighten things up a little bit like my Glock 19, and we'll see how that goes, and we'll see if we have to make alterations from there. But yeah, that's just the name of the game. You don't know what you're going to get. You don't know how it was made and so on. But just thought we'd go over the whole trigger debate. There's a lot of good options out there nowadays, and honestly, you don't have to do anything to your trigger. If you train enough, you're fine. But like I said, Gen 5s tend to have good triggers. 43Xs tend to have good triggers. Gen 3s are a little, 50-50 with triggers you get, but like I said, $13 reliable part can fix that, completely. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys.